This is Signal and Noise, bringing clarity to data, tech, and AI.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Signal and Noise. I'm Brett House, joined by my co-host Rio Longacre, and today we've got Evgeny Popov, who has, if you don't know him, he's at Samba TV. He's built one of the most interesting careers in modern media. His path across publishers, agencies, AdTech platforms, data companies is pretty unique, right? And you've had leadership roles, Evgeny, we'll call you Yev, just to simplify the syllabic aspect of your name, multi-syllabic aspect of your name. You've been you were at News Corp Australia, so you were on the media side. Lotame, which is certainly interesting and was around for a long time with Andy Monfried. Hearts
acquired
and
not long
Sciences,
ago. Yep.
yeah, Verve, one of the last data management platforms to be acquired. Although I know you guys had a lot of pivots, and now Samba TV, and you've participated in a bunch of exits, a bunch of company exits, which some of us have had the
I think
pleasure
you
of doing.
think 3 times, right? If not mistaken.
Can I just clarify that statistic? Because I think people will
go for it.
When you say exit, people say, well, you are the founder, so you actually exited a business as a founder. So I have one exit, which I have a company which I founded and exited, which is a coffee loyalty app, which was back in Australia. I can tell you more about that. So it's a real statistic. And then 2 companies which have been acquired, and me being part of that. So just to caveat that.
Yeah.
So
I think you should cut it.
Yeah,
because and I think that all when you're the founder, you just make more money out of the whole deal, right? Is what I think.
It's also bragging rights too.
Yeah, it's also bragging rights.
Yeah, and I probably make a fool of myself saying it now, but out of 2 of them, I made $0. So,
I've been through 2 exits in the DMP world with Exalate and New Star in the identity data tech world with TransUnion. And to your point, it came out okay, but definitely not the founder model, to your point. But Rio says you're one of the best connected, most network guys in the ad tech industry, which I'm interested to hear more. So why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself, for those that don't know you?
Yeah. No, thanks, Brad. What a wonderful introduction. And Brad and Rio, thank you for having me here. Such an honor. To answer your question about connections, I think I'm a collector. I like to collect good humans. And throughout my career, that's exactly what I've been doing. I've been expat for the past 26 years. I left Russia in 99 and moved to Australia and spent 15 years in Sydney, moved to Singapore, spent 5 years there, and then came to New York in 2018 or 19. And I've done 1 year in Latin America, just for the fun of it. So I've been around, but one thing is, you move countries, you move continents, you move companies, but one thing you have is you collect good connections and a network. So I think I'll take Rio's compliment. I don't think how true it is, but throughout this, 25 years of moving around, you definitely meet a lot of people. Surprisingly, in our industry, Brad, you probably can attest to that, a lot of the same people. So if you talk about measurable incrementality of my network and how fast it's growing, it's, I was always surprised, and I was still in Sydney back in the days, coming to programmatic IO, when it sold started 2013, and then it's 1 degree of separation. You meet the same people in early stages, and you're still meeting the same people. So it's interesting to see. In fact, I don't name names, but you see people who were account managers when I met them, and now the CRO of public companies. And it's like, wow, you see the evolution and how some people are supercharged in their careers. And I've been so fortunate to be part of that. So, that's definitely a journey. But I can tell you a bit more about, I guess, how it all started. And maybe
if you want to tell us your origin story.
Yeah. In fact, maybe before you jump in too, I think that and that's the reason I'm sure listeners want to hear about that, because I think it's a cool story, right? Looking at your resume and and this was what I thought would be really fun discussing, is it crosses not only all these different layers of the industry, right? Publishers, media agencies, programmatic, and now TV data, right? So I think that looking at your journey, understanding, and I'd love to hear your insights, especially your current role, but maybe we table that for a little later, right? About how you're taking this vast experience, how it's applying to CTV, to measurement. It's a rare perspective. So I think it's going to be a really cool discussion. with all that's going on, especially in CTV. So maybe kick us off there. Tell us about how you got started. Sounds like you're kind of like many of us, an accidental media executive. So love to start there.
I like that. I like accidental part because it exactly was that. So to Brett's question earlier about the exits and how it all started, I started as an engineer. I started my career working for Microsoft, joint venture with one of the publishers in Australia, in Sydney. But before that, I actually came to Sydney to work on one of the first meta travel search engines called hotelsclub.com. That was the first exit, which got acquired by Expedia, believe it or not.
Okay.
And yeah. So by
Yeah.
Orbis, but then now it's in Expedia's hands.
Yep.
And so it was an interesting way. I was head of kind of technology, had a big team. I was like 20 or something, had 25 people coding and, doing all this cool stuff. And then it got sold and I didn't know anything about stock options, what the transaction should look like. But,
Yeah.
I kind of come in with engineering and data pedigree back in the day. So that's always was my DNA. And even now, it's
Yeah,
interesting.
it certainly works in the AdTech, MarTech space because of the technical knowledge. It just helps a lot because we do end up going down those paths quite frequently when we talk to one another.
And Rio and I met at just spoke really briefly at Architecture Live, and I was telling Rio, I was like, "Hey, I'm shipping code again," and my team was looking at me like, "What? You can code?" It just feels good, like it's kind of 360, going back to your roots, going to obviously at the much faster velocity with ability to do that agentically.
Yeah, with
my God,
coding and Claude.
I can go into the weeds of that, but there's just like phenomenal pace. It's so good that my wife banned me to work on Sundays. So I'm not allowed to touch keyboard on Sundays. That's how I deal because that's so addictive. It's really is.
I told Rio I'm getting OpenClaw, a bot implemented on my Mac this weekend by a common friend of ours from Snowflake. And so I'm going to be diving deep. I use Codex and a little Claude as well, but it is incredible.
Well, just generally speaking, I find that like so many things like in my job that I was doing 10, 15 years ago, I'm able to do again and I'm able to do it faster. I'm able to do it better. It's a really cool feeling. So
yeah,
I know where you're coming from.
Rio, like it's so cool that I was at the gym this morning. This is a true story. I've purchased a domain on the fly. I created a shell of the project I'm working on, which I'll be deploying, and I've built a scaffolding as I was doing it between repetitions. Like this is not a joke. This is true.
That's badass.
Yeah, and this is stuff that would take you potentially weeks.
Just this morning. I have it, and I'll be able to deploy it after this call, and I'll send you the link. So like that's all done end to end. Architecture, deployment, hosting, domain names already.
Isn't that incredible? Yeah, and like we're learning these things sort of on the fly, and it's happening. So like, and just as an example in my life, I just so the guy that's implementing this bot on my computer and getting me OpenClaw educated, took my website, ran a full audit of a site that I hired a team, outsourced that, built all this content, spent weeks doing this, like back in December. Weeks and weeks and weeks getting this site up, and I'm still not particularly happy with it, highsignals.com. And he, over lunch, he's like, I'm making lunch right now and I'm going to rebuild your website. And, an hour later, he sends me the rebuilt website, completely hosted, almost
Probably
every page.
much better,
He didn't have all the assets. And it just blew me away. I was like, oh my God. And it wasn't just an imitation. It was a reconfiguration. There was some better packaging, some better, like, sort of how we engage, how we work type of workflows that I had thought about, but I just hadn't implemented. So it's pretty amazing how quickly that stuff can be.
Brett, you're
around.
right. Time to market is, it's a godlike ability, and kind of taking it back to this engineering days. When you understand how the code works, you can understand what's under the hood. You understand technology, you understand product. You're a builder. That's one of my virtues. Like you are that. Like that takes you to a different realm, like different dimension. And there's so many different extensions, so many different utilities we can talk about on how to virtualize things. I have 5 agents working with me when let's call vibe code. One is an architect, one is a product manager, one is and they all
an agent swarm, and each one
they
of
all
them
talk to each other. They talk to me. I'm a main input, but they helping me fast track things so much faster. They're contextualized on the project of what I'm working on, right? So you can they understand the semantic meaning of what we're building. So they're not just, Claude agent who has zero context of the project you're working on. And then you can extend on that. You can kind of, train them on the data which you're building or trying to build on, so they become smarter. So it's unbelievable, like what you can do on very this laptop we're just talking on.
To Brett's point before, this is all pretty new. Like the whole the agentic workflows really got I'll do it last November, December. They really got to a point you could just deploy them. So it's new, and it's amazing how quick it's moving. It's really remarkable. So it's cool to hear you're digging in as well. I mean, like as many of us are. So Evgeny, maybe just getting back to the questions here, like looking at, so you worked across pubs, agencies, data companies, programmatic platforms. Fair to say this was some really cool jobs. Is it fair to say this was more, doesn't seem like it was a deliberate strategy. It was more like you did, or was it, right? I'd love it if you could tell us about that.
Yeah, thanks for keeping me in check. Otherwise, I'll be agentic all the way. So back to the
we can riff on that for a while.
I know. Back to the story. So coming out of the that exit and joining in 9%, which was JV with Microsoft, and working on the kind of bringing the Microsoft Ad Exchange in 2009, and working on Atlas and Accipera, and the names probably only Brian O'Kelly and you guys remember, right?
Atlas.
So yeah, remember
Love
that?
it.
Yeah. So working with those, the building the behavior profiles and the retargeting for the first time, rich media. Anyway, so that was kind of invitation to advertising on the publisher side. But then one of the recruiters came up to me and said, this is just one startup launching in Australia called Brand Screen. It's one of the first Asian DSPs. Would you like to join that team to build the product and technology and being part of that team to effectively look after partnerships? And I said, what is OpenRTB? And that was the 2010 when,
2010,
yeah. When I just started, and by accident, it's almost complete pivot. I took a leap of faith. I was very comfortable where I was. Looking, had a big team, was in charge of BI and building cool stuff, and innovation in rich media. But then pivoting to absolutely unknown and taking a leap of faith on technology, which I did not understand. But that propelled me just to this universe of, first of all, not a commodity. Like no one knew what programmatic was back in the days. One of the first people who building something, you're talking to AdMelts of the world, you're talking to companies that don't exist that were being sold or acquired, like Exalates and Pulse Points.
Yeah, Exalate. That's where I was. And so it's funny. We all have that origin story. You start and you're just like, I remember my eyes being wide open, going, I can't believe all this is possible. And God, we've come a lot further since then.
So you have a little background here. Like Brett and I met at a small media agency where we were actually, it's pre-programmatic, where we were just doing buying kind of
arbitrage.
Also, a lot of it was arbitrage, marketing. Right? Yeah, it's performance marketing stuff. Yeah, a lot of it was CPA, or they would pay you CPA and you'd arbitrage at CPA for different direct response brands. So that's how we met.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, and then eventually that type of tech orientation, to your point, gets you connected to other places, and then you're like, remember when big data was a term, like big data, that's what kind of led me to Exalate. I was like, I want to get into this space. Before they were even a data management platform, they were a data marketplace that they were like a cookie farm that was founded in Israel. And so I joined that, and then we sort of evolved that. But that was getting early in that journey and seeing how it's evolved has been fascinating.
Oh, it's so fascinating, Brad. Blue Kai just entered the Australian market, and Omar technology was like, wow, DMP, right? So data big data, right? So to your point, how do you manage customers' data assets and what that means in marketing activation side of things? It was phenomenal. So that was kind of the inception of programmatic, going into China, working with Baidu's of the world back in 2012, burning out on cost because infrastructure was so expensive back in the days. So many mistakes, so much to learn. In fact, Cadreon had one person in Australia, and we were building them a DSP just for them, right? And then for Viveki as well. And kind of, just this agency trade as ATDs. Remember ATDs? ATDs was kind of just surfacing up, and we competing against Media Math, the Brain, the Terms, Data Zoo,
RIP. A lot of our IPs here.
and maybe that's it. Trade Desk wasn't even born yet, you know. So
Not
like,
even yet, yeah.
yeah. So that was like the epoch of Adconians and ad networks, right? So that was
Adconian, I remember them. Yeah, yeah.
Remember
Kind of
that?
that was like the height and but close to the end of the ad network thing. Yeah.
That's right. So building on that and developing technology, which was amazing. So that's kind of was my induction into the programmatic, into the real programmatic world. 3 people in Australia knew what the hell that was going on, and I wasn't one of them. So
Yeah,
that's for sure.
And this was all before. This is before you joined Verve, right?
Well, it's before news. Like, so that's after that, News Corp, and remember another for that acronym, not agency trade desk, but publisher trade desk. So remember those ones? So we kind of built in the programmatic capabilities. Think of it, the waterfall after, the remnant inventory. Remember those conversations that how can we sell it at the open auction, and building a stack behind it. So I was instrumental of actually building in, bringing partners like Rubicon Project and Adapt TV back in the days, and building.
And this is kind of like before actually yield management solutions even came out, right? This is kind of a predecessor to that.
Rio, that was I'm proud of this moment. I'm not sure people know that, but we ran the first PMP in Australia through Rubicon Project. Like, that was the first PMP on News Corp. That was first deal ID ever created in Australia, for that technology.
And that's now Magnite.
Yeah. So
right?
You see,
and Exelate's Mark Zagorski was the one that brought those companies, what Tremor Video or Tremor Media was originally, which became Teleria, that joined Rubicon Project, and they formed and became Magnite. Yeah. So you've been on a lot of these pivots, right? Lotame went through a bunch of different pivots. I mean, it started out as sort of a data management platform, and then got into data collaboration. They were like the last DMP standing. Everybody was like, when Exelate sold, and Aggregate Knowledge sold, and Blue Kai sold, and everybody's like, what's going on? Tell us a little bit about that experience. And Verve, similar. There are a lot of pivots with Verve. You lived through this.
Brett, like, Lotame is such an Andy Manfred. Big shout out to Andy. I love his energy, his vision, and kind of joining his team. Effectively, initially on the DMP side, just selling SaaS to publishers, starting in Australia and moving to Singapore. But then we realized, hey, there's an untapped opportunity to build a data marketplace in Asia, in APAC. So I've started doing that as a solo, kind of a lonely wolf, they called me, running 8 different markets, going in traffic and ads.
You were effectively like a general manager of that?
Well, I don't know if you could call me, because I was in DV360 trafficking ads.
Right? Yeah.
I was trafficking ads in DV. I was going to publishers to acquire data. So I was like end to end, from acquisition to productization, to go opening new emerging markets like Taiwan or Hong Kong. In fact, Jeff Green was in Hong Kong when we were kind of working with Trade Desk. He was living there, so interfacing with him back in the days when he was approachable, in that capacity, before obviously, the growth I have had. So being in that stream was amazing. And frankly, just fortunate to have the opportunity to grow with Lotame. They moved me from Singapore into New York to oversee global business for them. And in fact, humbly, I do take some credit for that exit, because the team under my leadership, obviously with Andy and everyone else, that's the data signal which publicists needed. They acquired Lotame for international traffic, and can't take credit for it, but the team we have built together, starting in Asia and then moving into Latin America and EMEA, that's the signal which was complementary to Epsilon PII data, which they have at scale. So that's, to your podcast, signal, that's what they bought it for.
That was the signal. So it was the international signal. That was it. Okay,
absolutely.
And that's very, very hard to get. I mean, we saw that with Exelate. I mean, I was at TransUnion, where they have credit data, but which is certainly multinational, but it's very hard to get once you get outside of the US, because of governance and privacy constraints, and it requires partnerships, tons of like,
it was tons of work, but you're right. And if Lotame benefit from many things. They had a DMP business, so a lot of broadcasters, publishers, they had that DMP technology to understand their consumers and to profile them, to cluster them, to activate them. So you had that technology already deployed in a lot of networks and pubs. So we used that footprint to monetize some of that data anonymously for the marketplace. So you had that leverage of SaaS integration across different geographies as a backbone to effectively build upon to build a marketplace on
Yep.
it. So that's why I put that exit just a little tick. Angie probably will shout at me, but you know what? I'm proud of that work and I'm going to stand by it. So
Yeah. You're a fundamental part of the team that's worth counting.
Well,
Thank
Andy's
you.
one of the most liked people in the industry. Like he's almost universally liked. I mean, like Adam Solomon, who was there for a little bit, I'm pretty tight with him, and he's only good things to say about him. So must have been a good experience working together. Sounds like it had a good outcome. So congrats on that.
Yes, and Adam as well. I worked with Adam while he was there, and Angie. So yeah, it was a great team. Great team.
So then you move to you're at Verve. Is Verve follow Lotame? I'm getting the chronology wrong here.
Yeah, so am I now.
Because
Verve was
I remember Verve back in the day in New York City. They were like a location data company.
correct.
And,
yes,
all the mobile data.
Kind
And
of like
all
Foursquare in some ways, right?
Yeah.
In terms of, like,
and all the XLA people are complaining that it was it's crap data. We had cookies, so I'm not sure how much better off they were or worse off they were. But
Verve was in it. Yeah, I'll tell you about the Verve. Verve was an interesting story. So parent company Verve is MGI, Media Game Invest. So what they really focus on is gaming, owned and operated on console, on your phone, on laptops, right? So you have the gaming mogul with a lot of games, and they said, well, let's just start the ad business because we have a ton of PII data for gaming, and we can infer behavior for gaming, for purchase, etc. So let's just buy businesses on both buy sell side and build a business out of this. And so Remco was behind orchestrating all of that, and he's very knowledgeable and knows how to acquire businesses at the right moment for the right price. That's his
that's his superpower.
It is, yeah. He's just good at that. So
yeah, that's an important CEO superpower. If you don't have all of the organic growth you need inorganic growth, which can
true.
Help,
yeah,
right, can help bring some cash in the door. And
ability to bring in money and ability to identify acquisition targets and pull the trigger.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And they did this and they're still doing this, with Captify acquisition and Junior Group, etc. So you have a plethora of businesses on buy and sell side, which they trying to orchestrate it and make sense of it. And at the time, there was need of transformation and consolidation across both buy and sell side. They had 3 SSPs. You probably know them, Brad. PubNative and Smarto, and I think So they bought a lot of good mobile first SSPs, and then they have acquired 3 GSPs and contextual player, and now they have an ecosystem play. And more importantly, how do they then propagate the gaming data through it as your unique source and differentiation? So back to every conversation we have, we go back to the signal. So
and did it continue to be mobile centric despite the game, or did the gaming acquisition?
Did they buy the games themselves, or did they buy the publishers, or just the games? How did that work?
Yeah, they bought the publisher, and they produced a lot of I think 5,000 games or something. Car racing games. Little utilities. Honestly, I'm not a big gamer, but believe it or not, my dad is 82 and he plays games. Anyway, it's a big
business. I mean, that's all. Everyone knocks on AppLovin all the time, and but you think about their whole business, it's just mostly just mobile, mostly games. So keep going.
It certainly thematically reminds me of AppLovin and what they did to build their ecosystem. But
they became a mediation for that, right? So they had supply, they had large demand, and the consolidations was needed. I came in as a head of international and kind of mapped it together. And I was interested. I never managed CEOs, right? Although there were small businesses, 50 people companies, which have been acquired. I never managed people, who had exit strategy, who had the earn-out strategy. So I actually learned a bunch on how to have, follow the incentive, on how to imagine, right, trying to consolidate businesses with potentially, conflicting interests or self-serving interests, which rightly so. If I was a co-founder, I would
the tech becomes the easy. The tech and the data is the easy part. It's actually the organizational differences, the incentive structures, right? The alignment across organizations that becomes the hardest part. You get fiefdoms, right? But that's the hardest part.
You know what? But that's such a challenge. You can look at it. how do you learn from that? How do you, for me, that was a great learning curve, and Verve was great for that. And then in between that, I had a bit of agency experience, and now I'm at Samba. So kind of, I think I work for everybody except the brand. So Brett, if you know,
You're looking to swing over from the vendor side.
in 3 years' time, if this next step is probably working with a CMO, that would be banned. But
Yeah.
Funny,
And
I've
for those
never
that
worked brand
aren't,
actually. Brett, have you worked for brand? I don't think you have either, Brett.
I've not. I've been on the vendor tech side forever. Yeah. Yeah. So no. But Samba TV. I mean, everybody knows it as CTV. Maybe that's where their knowledge ends. Obviously, it's data. There's some measurement. You have ACR technology, which kind of brings me back to Nielsen, because ACR was talked about all the time. That's automatic content recognition.
Yep,
that's right.
Right. Which is basically the ability to track on the television glass what's being watched and all of the content metadata, like Grace Note did that, which was acquired by Nielsen. But tell us, because I think we kind of walked through this trajectory for a reason. There's a purpose we went through this meandering path of Yev's background, because it's a really interesting perspective to bring to the television and connected TV world. I mean, how do you see all that connecting? And tell people a little bit about Samba TV as well, and what your vision and mission is.
So for me, it was, I think, natural progression. I was like, what is next? What areas of unfamiliarity I can enter to get better at? And, I never, I sold ACR data for Lotame. Like we had Visio data back in the days, Inkscape before the problem. So
who doesn't have Visio data?
Right. That was like bad prior. But, I really want to get into, the measurement side of things. And, I'm sure you want to talk about that, but also understanding the technology behind it, because it's fairly complex, but maybe a bit controversial, because Samba TV has rebranded. I'm not sure if you know that, Brad and Rio. We dropped the TV at CES, so we are Samba
okay.
now. We are Samba, and and this is
Samba. Okay.
And I'll tell you why. So Samba had a legacy.
We'll have to edit that out in post production, because you might face some scrutiny from the PR and comms team.
We'll see that. Yeah. No, I think it's a public knowledge. But I've been wrong before, so we'll find out. So historically, you're right, Brad. So Samba basically is used to be television data and measurement company, specifically working on content, automated content recognition technology.
Yep.
But since then, we have acquired a company called Samazio, which is you're probably familiar with, right? So Casper's business, which was based pure contextual. So what we have done is mapped TV, let's say, attention and viewership signal, and then intentionality of the web. So, 2.5 billion URLs, you crawl, you understand context, content, semantic meaning, classification, pure NLP with a sprinkle of NLU of understanding how you derive that metadata, and then you map it together through our ontology graph, which is a knowledge graph.
So you can connect down to show level, content level, time spent.
And are you licensing? So are you licensing this to the manufacturers, the OEMs? Are you licensing this to the CTV companies? Because so my understanding is like reviewing the content, taking snapshots, and trying to providing those signals, right? Which you turn into that ontological graph. So how does the business model work?
Yes, so the data is coming from 25 OEMs, Rio.
Okay.
And it's a global data. This is one of our major USPs. So, for example, in Germany, Philips is still a very predominant TV player.
Okay.
And we have, Sony's, TCL's, Hisense of the world, where, it's fairly representative long tail of OEMs. And we love that. We love that for a reason, because geographically, psychographically, income level distribution of who buys those TVs gives us a representativeness across geographies. So that's very important diversification aspect on which households and what properties of this household own those TVs, and at what price point, right? So you have the representativeness. So we collect that data on the chipset level, right? So that's how ACR technology works. You have your, visual and audio fingerprint, couple fingerprints per second. In fact, you collect the data, and then more importantly, you map it against a large content library which you have, right? So then you can get what program or ad was on the screen, when it at which household saw it, for example, and then gives you that level of, ACI is very powerful because it gives you that neutrality, right? And also gives you holisticality, linear,
Yeah.
cable, streaming, gaming,
And you're
fast
capturing
channels,
this
and
at a device ID level, right? You're capturing these signals, and then I'm assuming you probably anonymize it to a certain extent, right? Put it into these models, but then you can drill down to see which content was reviewed at a household level.
Exactly. Yes. And then you have, and then we have identity graph, which we have acquired one of the Dutch businesses, Friend 6, which gives us kind of identity resolution, gives us mapping, crosswalks between, any identifier you can think of. And it becomes.
Yeah. And that's where you would map across channels once people go off the television glass to mobile, to desktop, to laptop, et cetera.
That's right. And gives you like household, graph understanding on who is viewing what at what time. And also ability to then do attribution against that. So
I got a question, just out of curiosity. ACR, is that actually, what is the actual hardware behind ACR?
So, Brett, you think of it as a little program running on the chipset level.
Yeah.
Within, which is deployed as a firmware into your TV set. So you basically, every first time you start a TV, you have to consent to it, saying, I consent on Sony, for example, on their TVs, you consent to be, to send this data for ACR purposes.
And it's installed on the hardware itself.
It's stored on the hardware itself. It can be rewired with the updates because, new like think of it as an OS for TV, right? Which it is, and then you can kind of reload it and understand how you capture, what you capture.
But that requires that relationship with the OEMs where you're actually at the manufacturing plant when they're putting chip 138 into, like that's actually where it's happening at that level.
Right. That's why CES is like we've done. CES is our not just tentpole event. This is where we've started the business.
That's the event for you. Yeah.
The event. This is where the TV manufacturers were coming in before there were smart TVs. With some tickers at the bottom saying that, like this is the first generation of apps, and that was that when Ashwin and executive team effectively start doing those deals and start collecting, OEM relationships, which became fairly large, footprint for Samba globally. So 50 million devices.
And is there a monetization fee? I mean, how are you paying? What's the compensation for the TV manufacturers, the OEMs?
So there's different deals with different manufacturers. The idea is to, and also different restrictions, Brad. Like for example, Netflix blocks, not just us, but Samsung, LG, everybody. So that there's forward restrictions on what content can be recognized, what's copyrighted, what's not. So there's as you can only imagine, the fragmentation of that relationship is a nightmare. So you have, but there's also little workarounds. For example, if you, Brad, I do sometimes, I plug in to my HDMI to my TV and use it as a screen. Yep. Well, now it's not a TV anymore. So if I watch Netflix on my laptop and screen it, fingerprint works.
The
right?
source, the canonical device is your laptop, not the television.
So you're not actually fingerprinting off the TV app itself. You just stream it as a source, as a projector, effectively, right? So you have all different scenarios, fire sticks, etc., on how content is, can be consumed on the screen, and then all the legalities around that.
And assuming you pay the OEMs then to be installed, right? And and our viewers may not know this, but the prices of hardware just gone down so much the last 10, 15 years. A big reason for that is that the OEMs are able to make money because of these types of deals, right? Where they're actually sharing data. I'm assuming this is that's a good description of it.
In fact, I believe in some instances, hardware is negative margin.
Negative.
So you lose money on TVs. So obviously supplementary income is to have this type of relationships.
So that's how you can buy a 72-inch flat screen for $500 at Sam's Club. That's why you can do that, because of
that's right. And you remember there's businesses, is it Telly? I think maybe I'm misquoting. Yeah, who giving you hardware for free. Yeah, but then there's monetization. So that's not far from reality, because TV is already thin margin, single digit business. So that's just a symbiotic and very healthy relationship. And then, Brett, to your question, what do you do with the data after that? Obviously there's a plethora of use cases on how that data can be used depending on who you're talking to. Obviously, as you understand, every ad which been aired, we have viewership of that data, and so it can be used for conquest, and can be used for business intelligence, for market channels. So they're like this utility even outside of targeting. So planning, discovery, is just the beginning of the game. We have companies who work with us purely for analytical use cases. So, for example, companies who look at this data. What was the last show you watched on Netflix before you moved to Amazon Prime to start watching X, Y, and Z? And then so churn analysis, for example, and that becomes a very large business to go back to SWOT to basically to build a more sophisticated models on what people are watching, why they're changing, why they're shifting. Fascinating, really fascinating utility of what you can think of that data. So it's not, some people say, oh, ECR just, targeting desperate housewives on, on desktop. Yeah, maybe.
This is for customer growth, customer retention, right? A new
Correct.
customer comes into a new platform like Prime, and you want to show them content recommendations that are relevant to them, and you're pulling that from their past behavior on a different platform, possibly on a different device, which is pretty powerful.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah,
Spot
and
on.
so do you think you mentioned Telly, which their tagline is great. It's the biggest thing to happen since color TV. That's a pretty bold statement. Do you think Telly has? And I've talked to a few of the folks over there.
Well, they have a waiting list for their devices. Apparently, like people really want them. So keep going, Brett.
Yeah. Do you think that there's a future in that? I mean, it's in like the vision that I see it is it's basically like your iPhone. They want to make it this sort of device that's central to your life, that's a lot smarter than what televisions have really ever been. So you can do. It's kind of like your mobile phone has turned into really a handheld computer, right?
I'm torn. I'm not sure, Brad. Like I think it's consumer choice, right? Some low-income families might find it more attractive because it's a free hardware and gives you the basics of what you want to watch. But then it comes with ads. It comes with disruption.
And the ad model I found a little weird because it sounds like there's almost like some built-in ad redundancy where it's like you get ads on the actual physical device and ads within the streaming services that you subscribe to if you're doing fast type of channels. So I'm like, so you're actually are you doubling your ad load? I mean, as a consumer, it doesn't seem that attractive. If that's
for me personally, as a consumer, I think that's not it's not experience I would like to have in my living room. Right? There's also I'm maybe speaking completely wrongly here. Like you can't cover the panel, I think, because there's like camera detection or something. Like, there's some censoring, So like there's that. I don't know how privacy. There's just
apparently it can see if you're sitting down to watch. I mean, apparently there are some sensors. I don't know how privacy centric it is, but apparently it's pretty, sounds a bit intrusive.
I had problem enough with the Ring.
Listen, I was about to say I have enough problems with my Roomba by vacuuming my floor. Like I want to close
the television is watching.
Yeah. I already have a problem with that with the cleaning devices.
But that's one thing that Samba TV can't do because speaking of watching, unlike the sort of Nielsen viewer, and if people don't know, Nielsen television, it's kind of the old Simpsons episode, right? You get sent a controller that literally has buttons on it. At least this is how it was when I was there. And the buttons are like person A, person B, person C, person D. So you identify yourself as you start to flip through content. So
I don't think it's changed very much. I mean, they're building a panel. It's not a big panel. And so they
can tell who's watching. You would have to probably back into that data, I'm assuming.
So we don't use panel for that. So, we don't need to have a kind of a human input. So that's just different business model. Our strategy was, Brad, is to have, representativeness by just having a 25 type of global deals with OEMs to just have enough density for let's say local affiliate network to say in that particular town we have
150 television
150
coverage.
TVs, which are not noise, which are not in the pubs or not in the gyms, which are actually in the households, so removing the noise, right? To make sure, okay, we have enough representativeness to say that we have enough viewership signal to support X, Y, and Z use case. That always was the case. That was
Yeah,
always
to
the
support
case.
investment because you know that you're going to get
That's right.
the
So
audience
if someone
reach
is
and the
buying
density.
on that geo, on that TMA, on that zip code, like in that locale specifically, like you have representative data to do both measurement and to derive inside of that. So that was really kind of just the model
Yep.
Samba has built, and it kind of played in our favor versus where you have maybe more high end TVs from Samsung or LG, which are more media businesses, versus Samba, where we don't touch media. We are agnostic in that sense and representative. So I like that angle. As I was speaking to Rio, laughing about that in person. Like, there's just so many smoke and mirrors in our industry, and you guys know it.
Yeah.
I've been in the industry for
Yeah.
not your first rodeo. So I'm like, give me a substance, give me consented data, which is unique and which has utility and has, in somewhat future proofed. There's obviously legislation and all everything else which is flying around, but that was kind of how can I make the best bet possible? And I was like,
Yeah.
sound like a good bet and a
Yeah,
good
yeah.
team. So
and future proof just to because it's in the hardware. It's not an IP address, which is not future proof, regardless of what people want to tell you. It's not even email is technically not future proofed, but
And you have the
cookies for sure.
relationships. You're in the hardware, and you have the relationships with the OEMs. I think that's very important. And
That's right.
plus, like talk about future proof, like TV, like I was thinking reading the other day, it's projected to grow 16, 17% over the next couple of years, which is pretty significant, right? I mean,
CTV, right?
all TV.
Oh,
like
okay.
obviously linear's declining, but CTV, the growth in CTV is making up for it. So it's a good industry to be in.
And like Amazon slogan is, your margin is my opportunity. For Samba, if I had to rephrase that, I'm just thinking on the fly, fragmentation is our opportunity. Like, really. So if you look in how the content is consumed in the living room, that's what Samba solves for, right? So cross-platform measurement. How many unique people did I reach across all TVs? And I think this is what we solve for. And it's still, like, to Brad's point, measurement is fragmented. You have live TV panels. We
Yep.
spoke about, platform-specific streaming data. Digital ad measurement is different. So industry still needs a unified currency layer, right?
You brought up that word, the
Yeah.
currency
Oh,
layer.
that's it.
I
Oh,
love it.
by
That's
the-
a dangerous one.
Okay. And by the way, before we go on, I stand corrected. So CTV is growing at around 16, 17%. And then
Yeah.
linear is declining by around 7%. But overall, it is growing.
Streaming is about 45% of total television consumption, with linear being
Yep.
about 44%. Yeah.
So linear is declining.
And
CTV is
CTV's
growing.
grown at a much larger rate than any media channel, right? Which is that 17, 18% level.
Yep.
So let me ask you this: when it comes to viewership and measurement, right? Because you guys have this deterministic sort of hardware specific ACR data that's built into a huge volume of televisions globally, are you able to then definitively break apart the stuff that people are claiming is CTV, right? Really bifurcate other media that might be called CTV or streaming X being, content that's being consumed on other devices that's not actually being consumed on the television screen, because there's a lot of actors out there faking CTV audiences, which are actually not being consumed on the television glass. They're being consumed on laptops and mobile devices,
That's
right?
right.
So you guys, I'm assuming, have the ability to sort of help, separate the wheat from the chaff in that respect.
You're right. And, like, by definition, this is what ACR is, right? We observe everything on the screen: linear, broadcast, cable, streaming apps, even gaming, fast channels, OTT, advertising. So you have all that signal consumed in real time. So you really have that true cross-platform visibility, which is important. So if you're talking about, Brett, measurement, one of our biggest products, obviously, on the measurement is true reach and frequency cross-platform, right? So can you solve for incrementality across linear versus your digital, programmatic? So we have partners who use that just for that. So that's why when I started with definition of Samba, although we dropped the TV and we have all the different data sets mapped together, in our heart, we're still a measurement and data company, and always has been. And I like the neutrality aspect of that. So we don't claim, we remain agnostic. And that was always our thesis, and how we can, how can we evolve. And by acquisition of Simazi, kind of fusing, like, what other signal can we fuse into this ontology graph? You're watching Desperate Housewives, and then you're doing research on, I don't know, you become travel intendant at the same time. Like, you have very interesting mix of your intentionality. This is, by the way, why Verve bought Captify, and exactly for that data. So we have that contextual understanding and meaning of what you are reading, what websites are you visiting, what the sequential and storytelling there is, and then what are you watching at the same time within that household, and the graph to map it to an identity level. So you have that level of understanding, and then from there you can start building to outcomes. You can start doing measurement.
And does that identity graph, what's the scale and scope of that? I mean, is that multinational, like your television OEM footprint?
So yeah.
Because how extrapolated is it, or is it a data set that's pretty gigantic?
It's I believe it's 50 million TMVs in the US.
Okay.
I probably should have come prepared.
And so that sounds like it's an identity graph that gives you a seed audience to be able to care.
So this is pure. No, this is the TV. This is the households we have. So like, this is not extrapolated number, right? So and then you have 2.5 billion URLs which we scan, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what I was looking
and
for.
there's like 1 billion of maids, and all ID face connected
the
to
50 million is the actual OEM devices.
OEMs
devices.
which are filtered out from, and there's a
Well, you compare that to Nielsen, right? Those numbers, right? You figure, like, what's Nielsen? 42,000 in the US, which is around 100,000. 40,000 households, which are around 100,000 people overall, right? So I think you compare it. That's a sizable identity graph.
It's been fascinating talking to you and seeing this sort of trajectory all the way through Samba TV, and talking about some of the kind of hard problems that you guys are solving for in a pretty complex space that's got a lot of
and some detail on like how this whole thing works, right? I think a lot of people don't really understand that, so it was good to know.
Yeah, I mean, ACR. I wanted to know exactly how that was implemented into the machines themselves,
Into the hardware.
right?
Yep.
And that was fascinating. So tell us. I mean, as you've walked us through your career, I mean, what do you think is the hardest part about building a career in ad tech today?
I think keeping up with the change. The velocity is the technology, just going way too fast, and consumer behavior specifically pushing that change. So if you're a learner, and if perseverance is your virtue, and you really, offer a challenge, I think you should have a breeze. But if you are not, then that's a death sentence as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. The days of hiding in a cubicle and pretending that you're working for a large company are kind of those are over. But you sort of have to. I think your point earlier about being a builder is pretty important, because you can't just be safe in a structured sort of environment and system like you could in the past, because it's so rapidly being disrupted. And
you better get comfortable with tech. I mean, I think that's for sure, regardless of what industry. But I think especially in ours, it's so tech driven. What's one company or technology and media that you think is massively underrated, maybe flying a little bit under the radar, that you want to call out?
I would never bet against Jeff Green. So there's a lot of heat on Jeff now, but I have deep respect for what he has been building. So I would bet on Trade Desk, maybe short it for now, but that's my answer.
Is shorted for now with the Publicis battles?
Yes.
Yeah, and I've heard that before, that just as a leader and somebody that's able to pivot and adapt and change and adjust. Yeah, I think that's
I don't know. His battles with the holdcos, I'm scratching my head over that. They built their entire business like really being easy to work with holdcos. When you look at the UI they pushed out, no one liked, and so I don't really understand it. But I think you're right. He's a good leader, so I probably would be foolish to bet against him too.
Yeah, and there is this whole sort of it's a battle of transparency, with the holdcos not having the level of transparency. But you could argue that programmatic.
Principle-based media, Brett. I mean, it's like, I mean, I don't think anyone thinks it's great, but like when clients buy just based on CPM race of pubs, and it's just race to the bottom. I mean, I think you could argue from the holdco perspective, it's increasingly hard to make money without it. So I
Yeah.
like, again, like apparently some big expose next week about that. So I'm curious to see how that goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just once you start to dig beneath the surface of programmatic media, as we've explored a ton in this podcast with Dr. Fu and
Yeah.
folks like that, you start to realize that transparency may not be the leg you want to stand on, considering how much dirty, bad data there is. Speaking of what we talked about with CTV,
But you called it the dark underbelly. Remember
the
that?
dark underbelly
Yeah.
of the data targeting ecosystem. My father, we were just making fun of sort of older parents and their technology challenges, but he said for years that I'm in the surveillance marketing business.
He has merit.
I was like,
He has merit, absolutely. And Brett, to your point, like, the even basic transparency on the auction level, like the premise of programmatic, like, let's start there, So
yeah,
let's
the
talk
real-time
about
bidding play of
rebates
it.
later. Let's talk about, the dirty laundry. But like
supply path, all that. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's just start with the auction.
Yeah, what do you think is being sort of overhyped? I mean, we could all say AI, but I'm not sure that's overhyped, right? If you had like an over/under bet here, I would be like, I think that's actually probably not being sufficiently hyped, even though it is being hyped. What do you think of the most overhyped thing in the industry that you're seeing right now? MarTech, AdTech?
It's a good one. I wouldn't say AI, but I think AI agents doing everything is overhyped. I think it will happen, and the timeline for that, based on some estimation, is about 18 months from now. But that's, I guess, hype versus reality. It has a timeline. And also another thing is automation is better via UX, right? So what is true agentic versus what is true as a UI user experience in UI itself? Because a lot of agentic workflows, automations we have seen, which I think is overhyped for sure, is recreating similar experiences, but just with agents. But what's the difference to going to booking.com, for example, typing those fields versus telling the same fields to your agent to book that via the booking.com? So I think that dichotomy is definitely overhyped.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Like, what would be your advice to someone who's just like getting out of B school or just starting their career, who wants a career in advertising? And what would what would be your advice to what they should focus on, where they should start? Is there a type of company, a type of technology? Like, where would be a good place for them to dig in?
I would say, if I would give myself advice on the same thing, where would I start my career? I think the answer would be the same. I would start with data infrastructure and measurement. Someone still has to measure your homework. And if you have independent measurement, or you understand data infrastructure, and let's call it cloud infrastructure, I think you have. So, okay, go back to your name, the first word in your podcast. That's where I would go, signal, and maybe add trust to it. So,
yeah. So like if you're in college, I've got a son at Syracuse right now, and he's in the media space, and should I push him towards things like econometrics, right? Understand the fundamentals of data and data statistics and data analysis, and how this stuff is sort of integrated into decisioning, right? Which, whether it's happening in AI or in a data warehouse or in a professor's spreadsheet. Right. Do you think those types of areas are kind of important for understanding how data works? And
I would say, Brett, maybe I'm biased because this is kind of my upbringing, my background. My father always said, you have to know mathematics and do applied mathematics. Applied meaning you can apply it to anything, from biochemistry to epigenetics to advertising and future of marketing. Like, it's universal language. Look what we see about embeddings, about future, about LLMs, how they work. It's all math. So if you understand it, you might have merit. We talked about automation part. Do you need to understand in the future to move away from AGI to SGI and super intelligence? And do you have merit in that? Or will it be 1% of population who needs to really control that narrative? I don't know. But I think you have a good chance and better bet if you do know versus not knowing. That helped me. All my career was kind of based on that, from doing sales, doing analytics, doing whatever anything. In the end of the day, you still end it with a spreadsheet. It was people don't excel, and if you don't understand that, you have a problem.
Yeah, I think in order to disrupt or to deconstruct, you really need to understand how things are built from the ground up, and if they're built on mathematical principles or technical principles. A lot of the people that have succeeded in our industry have been technical people that then build out some of the commercial knowledge and experience. It's the classic CEO role. I was on product and now I'm in sales. If you can play both of those worlds and bridge those worlds, I think you're advantaged by definition, and you've certainly done that in your career,
It helped me
right?
tremendously, Brett.
Bridge those
It helped me
worlds.
tremendously, moving from tech product to operations, and then just finishing now with the commercial. When you understand things, when you can talk to it in simple language, it just called authentic selling. You don't need to read slides. You just explain how it works, and you become natural, authentic seller. And I think that was my journey. It helped me tremendously. To your point, Brett, understanding technology and kind of using that as a spine and then dress it up nicely with cool slides, which can be agentically generated. Your differentiation is not the presentation layer, but understanding. But also, I was thinking about that. Something I would love to learn more of and kind of, practice is one thing which I think will truly differentiate great from good in the future is ability to articulate succinctly anything. And I think that that's a human element, right? So Mackenzie style speech, when you come in and you really can capture the audience with your narrative, with your storytelling, and you can grip them with that attention, that skill will be universal. And I think will be more prominent than anything else. So this is something I'm working on now. And this is not the ad for Mackenzie
Yeah.
training, but
No, but it's funny you say that because that's come up a few of these other podcasts
Yeah.
with leaders who've said that like it's, if anything, maybe more important now, right? Because you can use AI to crank out code and to churn out a lot of maybe content that's okay, right? But being able to understand what it means, being able to write good prompts, be able to take what the AI gives you and then communicate that in a great way. And also, to your point, be able to talk to technical people as well as business people, be able to bridge that gap. I mean, I think that's an incredibly important skill that not many people have.
100% agreed.
Definitely a superpower. Well, yeah, but it's been phenomenal talking to you. I wish we
It's
could
been
go
fun.
all day on this, on these topics. Yeah, so we always ask, how can people reach you?
Yeah, if they
How do
want to get a
people get
hold
in
of
touch
you,
with
like
you?
what's the best way? Is there
Yeah,
is
the
there
best way
social
is,
media?
I think LinkedIn, like I'm not omni-channel, it's probably my Achilles heel. LinkedIn is my poison. And, I'm always open to ideas to collaborate with people. So please do reach out, always reply. So thank you, Brad and Rio. It
Awesome.
was absolutely amazing talking to you. A very engaging conversation. Both thought leaders and
On
very
a late
provoking.
Friday when
No.
we're all running on fumes after a busy week. But everybody, thanks for making it this far in the podcast. If you've made it this far, Signal and Noise, you can find us on YouTube, Amazon, not Amazon. We're going to be on Amazon soon, though. Rio and I have talked about that. But Apple
Yeah,
Podcast
YouTube,
and
Spotify, Apple. Yeah, subscribe if you haven't.
Yep.
Click
And we will
subscribe so they download automatically. Yep.
Yep. And we will see you next time. And thanks again, Yev.
Thanks, Jeff.
Pleasure to be here.